call to order the meeting of the Transportation Advisory Board of the Metropolitan Council. It is 12:32 on the 19th of January, 2022. Let's do the usual and do our roll call and our approval of the agenda in a single sort of roll call rotation. And Doug Anderson always does a good job leading us off there. So, Ms. Ernst, do you want to go ahead and call roll and approval of the agenda, please? Thank you.
Anderson.
Present and I.
Bailey.
Present and I.
Barber.
Present and I.
Barnes.
Present and I.
Crimmins.
Present and I.
Dugan.
Present and I.
Alexander in for Foster.
Present and I.
Geisler.
Present and I.
Giuliani Stevens. Gotell.
Here and I.
Hanson.
Present I.
Holberg.
Here, yes.
Looks like Rowe in for Hollinshead.
Present I.
Jalali.
Here, I.
Jepson.
Here and I.
Karwoski.
Present and I.
Keeley.
Present, aye.
Lewis.
Present and I.
Lindeke.
Here and I.
Look.
Present I.
Maluchnik. Randy, are you there?
Randy, you're not missing your first meeting, are you?
No, present and I.
Thank you. Martinson.
Here, aye.
Mattis Castillo.
Here and I.
Bewan.
Here and I.
Narayanan.
Here and I.
Petrick.
Present and I.
Schumber.
Present and I.
Stephenson. Ulrich.
Present I.
Williams.
Present and I.
Windshuttle.
Aye.
And Workman.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We've got an approved agenda. We've got a great group with us today. Is there anyone that's appearing in front of the tab that's not a tab member, a member of the public who wishes to address the tab on a matter of concern to them? Okay. Let's go to reports. And my first, the chair's report is brief today. We've got some new members to introduce. And some of them aren't so new in the sense that we haven't been working with them before. But in Ramsey County, Mary Jo McGuire is going to become the alternate, and Commissioner Trista Mattis Castillo is going to become the primary member of the tab representing Ramsey County. So welcome, Commissioner, in a different capacity. Citizen District B, Frank Boyles has declined reappointment, and we've got Randy Malushnik back with us, former Carver County Commissioner Randy Malushnik. Randy, thanks for joining us again. We're really pleased to have you back and all of that great experience and knowledge that you gained from all those years as being a county commissioner and also serving on the tab before. And then Citizen District C, Andy Lewis with Husnia Bradley as the alternate. Andy was previous alternate to Sue Sanger, who declined consideration for reappointment. And then on the transit side, Evan Rowe, alternate to Matt Hollinshead, is now with us. And then Stephanie Alexander is going to be the new alternate for Amity Foster. And then on the non-motorized, in the non-motorized category, Brian Martinson is now going to take over that responsibility. He was previously the alternate to Nick Fox. So that was those are our new members, and pleased to have everybody with us. And you'll love working with this group, I think. And some of you have been working with us, and I think, speaking affirmatively, I think you probably enjoyed it, and you would tell others that are brand new to the tab that they'll enjoy themselves as well. So agency reports, Mike Barnes, Member Barnes, anything to report out from MnDOT?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I do have an item here. I just wanted to highlight a little bit about as we ended the year. I think many have seen the news from the TZD standpoint that to towards zero death, that we were significantly up in 2021 as we ended the year. It was 498 deaths across the state that were up, over 100 from the previous year, which is this last year was the highest since 2007. And I think there's a number of different things that I think folks think in their mind that could be the contributing factors in that. I know we got a lot of folks that are working on what we could be doing to try to lower that. I know Elaine put a quick little chart in our materials that just kind of shows the breakdown by county to the metro standpoint. Of I say the TZD metro, including Chisago, were 200 of those 498 deaths are in the metro TZD. Again, not the 7 county, but the 8 with the TZD side. So you can see it's a significant, which is up from 120. So that's a big number. And so Elaine had that piece again that she put in the materials. I sent an item to Elaine that she'll be sending as a follow-up after the meeting. That'll be a spreadsheet that has a lot more graphs and some charts for folks to be able to look at. And part of why I wanted to send that and have it so we can get some feedback on what you like. I know it's going to probably be some more detail for some folks that are on here. They'll look at it and like seeing the different breakouts and that. But what I'm hoping that we can be able to do is have it where you can kind of see from your areas and be able to look and maybe see what you think are some activities that are going on, and maybe be able to see either what you think from policies and actions that are going, because these are not all deaths that are on trunk highways or across the whole system. So to get the information, you can kind of see the breakdown by county, see some of this the statewide. And in the email that I had sent to Elaine, I'm just going to highlight just some interesting facts when you start looking at some of the information. In 2021, statewide, speed was a contributing factor in about 33% of the fatalities statewide, but in the metro area it was 43%, which is definitely an increase. But then also the speed related fatality in just from metro, just out of our percentage, that was an increase of 75% in that same period. So you can, again, I think we're all feeling those effects when we are out there driving and seeing the speed side of it, which again, many can come back to saying, what about the kind of enforcement aspect of it? So that's one piece of the puzzle. But again, it's showing that the numbers in metro, ours is up 75% just from a metro difference in there. And then similarly from a statewide pedestrian, it increased about 29%, but in metro, the pedestrian fatalities increased 95%, and our motorcycle fatalities increased 54% compared to only 5% statewide. So you can see, again, that's just a couple examples of some of the data. And I know by saying this is without you seeing the data, but I just want to give you kind of an upfront. So when you see the spreadsheet, to look at it, and then as we go, getting some feedback here over the next few months of kind of what information that tab members would like to see. Again, there'll probably be some that are at a higher level, some that like to have some more of the details. So you'll be receiving that, and part of this too, like today now we'll be talking about there'll be a discussion on the safety performance. So I wanted to get a little bit of a discussion ahead on that. So with that, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions, that's all I had.
Yes, Member Barnes, let me see if there are questions. I think with that kind of startling data that you've got, there could be some. Or has there been any preliminary analysis done beyond speed to see what's major cause of the increase? Or is that analysis?
Yeah, there's actually, there's groups that are working and breaking things down. In fact, I know on the list of items that could come before tab, if there's interest in getting some more kind of reports from the TZD groups that are working on things, that could be one of the items that that come forward too, or if there's questions, if we don't have it on the agenda, if folks ask questions, I can also get folks to respond, and we can put them in replies after also.
Okay, good. Did that prompt any questions for Member Barnes at this point in time?
Mr. Chair, Mary Giuliani Stevens here. I don't have any questions. I had trouble logging in, but just wanted to let you know I'm logged in and in attendance. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, let's move
Right,
on
thank
to
you.
Todd. Yeah, was there a question? Go ahead.
No, just
Okay.
me, Mr. Chair, just saying thanks.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Move on to Todd Bewan with MPCA. Member Bewan, anything to report out on?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. One thing to make you aware of. So the governor's sub-cabinet on climate, which is represented by many different departments and agencies and state government who are thinking about climate issues and trying to address them. They're actually finishing up what they call a climate action framework that will be draft and probably be out for viewing in the next month or so. And they'll actually be seeking input on the plan in the springtime, and then they want to publish kind of the final in mid-2022. So this will be a public document that folks can comment on. And I just want to add to that, so encourage you to take a look at it, but also if the TAB would be interested in having a presentation on the plan between the time that it's draft and finalized, which could be in the springtime, early summer, that could certainly be arranged. And we could provide that as a presentation to the TAB. So just wanted to throw that out. We don't need to get into that decision making on that today, obviously, but we could talk offline if that's something that you're interested in scheduling.
Sure, we can take that up at the exec committee level, but I think that certainly would be something of interest to the TAB. So question, anything else, Member Bewan?
No, that's all I had. And obviously that plan it's comprehensive. It's going to include transportation issues, but it's going to include all the other sectors that contribute to climate and carbon emissions. So it would be more broad than just transportation in that presentation. But I think that we could do something and tailor it to this group as well.
Will it have an action component or recommendation to it? How to get to certain goals or establish certain goals?
I have not seen the draft, but I really anticipate that it would. I'm actually going to see a presentation on early stages here tomorrow. So I wish that was a day earlier, and then I could tell you more about what I've seen, but I can't answer specifics at this time.
All right, thank you. Are there questions for Member Bewan? All right, let's move on to Member Crimmins in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. We'll talk about operating revenue at the airport in November of 2021. The operating revenue was only down 10%, 10.6% from 2019. And our concessions are 83% open. Most of them are part-time. A lot of them are full-time. So it's hard to tell. They come and go depending on traffic. Testing at the airport, COVID testing at the airport was come as you want, as you walk in, but it was so successful or so appreciated that the cars were backing out into the driveway. So now you have to have an appointment. If you're going to come to the airport to test, there's COVID testing lanes you can drive into, but you got to get on the airport website and make an appointment. At one time, they were doing 2,000, almost 2,500 tests a day. So it was quite, and naturally, if everybody's driving, that's a lot of cars backing out of the parking lot. Labor negotiations, you've all heard about the Teamsters and the 49ers. They've reached a tentative agreement with the MAC. The members, we were told, are going to be voting on those contracts today. They seem fairly confident. The negotiators for the Teamsters and the operating engineers were fairly confident that it would pass the membership. So the idea of a strike at the airport, shutting down the runways because of snow or something like that, hopefully will not happen. and 5G. We've talked with AT&T. AT&T and the FAA have come to an agreement to delay the rollout of 5G within 3 miles of the airport because the 5G can interfere with radar and other airplane functions. So they're working through that. I don't know how they got this far along developing 5G and not knowing something like this, but it's better safe than never. But there has been a few articles written about flight cancellations due to 5G because some of the airlines are still not sure how it's going to reflect on their flight patterns and things, because it does shut down a runway or two, the use of a runway or two at the airport if 5G is in force. So thankfully, AT&T agreed to delay until the FAA and the AT&T and the phone companies can work it out. Other than that, that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chair.
All right, questions for Member Crimmins? That 5G information is pretty stunning. I know that they're talking about that out here in Washington too. So
yeah, it was quite a shock. I mean, to get this deep into it and have it being going to be rolled out in a couple of days, and finally, and then just find out that this is going to interfere with an airplane. It was stunning that nobody knew it. You know.
yeah, and it's already been approved other places around the country.
Yes.
So apparently, some folks weren't thinking it through either. So okay, any questions for Member Crimmins? Otherwise, we'll move on to Member Barber and her Met Council report.
This is Matt Hollinshead.
Yes, Member Hollinshead.
We hear that in Europe, 5G is implemented and does not interfere with the planes. So what, is that true or is that not true?
I have no way of knowing, but I would say it depends on the frequency that you're using for the radar and the airplane radio frequencies. It depends on radio frequencies and everything else. Maybe Europe uses a different frequency. I wouldn't know. I would have to ask somebody at the MAC.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you're welcome. Good question. All right, Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of things to report on. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about COVID. So one thing to put on all of your radars is scientists at the Metro plant in St. Paul are tracking COVID-19 in wastewater or sewage to determine the prevalence of COVID-19 among residents in the plant service area. Wastewater can help public officials better understand the extent of infection and supplement the clinical testing. Currently, scientists, they extract viral genetic material from the wastewater samples and send them to research partners at the University of Minnesota Genomics Center who measure the concentrations of the SARS-CoV-2. We share that data then with the Minnesota Department of Health to compare findings from wastewater sampling with the COVID-19 testing and infection rates. We definitely did observe the spike that Omicron has represented, but we are also currently starting to see that downward trend in the wastewater samples. So we're hoping that that holds. It's very interesting stuff. You can find more information on it on our website, or else there was a great story by NPR about how these rates match up with the clinical testing rates. Obviously, Omicron has continued to impact us directly. We already were having labor shortages, both with our contracted services like Metro Mobility and our operators and CanX through Metro Transit. This has sort of dealt us a double blow, but we're trying to work our way through it, but, you know, and trying to keep things going, but it has definitely been challenging. So put out the plea of anybody who knows someone who is interested in becoming an operator or a mechanic. We definitely are looking for people. And so definitely if you can use your networks to get the word out, we would appreciate it. Do want to highlight one last thing related to the pandemic. Metro Transit received a Circle of Excellence Award from the Minnesota Department of Human Services for its mobile vaccination units that provided access to the COVID-19 vaccine to underserved communities. 6 retrofitted buses transported Blue Cross staff to vaccinate more than 7,200 people at 170 unique sites in 42 Minnesota counties. So a big shout out to Metro Transit for that great effort and that great way to help out during the pandemic. Last couple of things, we just conducted the public hearing on the TPP amendment. That's been before here already. That was at the Transportation Committee on January 10th. Generally, the comments were very supportive of the ABRT additions. There was some continued concern about road expansion, roadway expansion related to some of the freight projects that were listed, but I would say overwhelmingly the comments were positive in nature. The comment period for that goes through next Monday, and you can still comment through Monday at 5, and then it will come back to tab on February 16th. One other thing that we have open for comment is the BLRT route modifications, and that one is open for comment through January 25th. So with that, I will pause for any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Member Barber. Any questions for Member Barber? Folks? Mayor Williams? Nothing? Okay. Your screen lit up blue, that's why.
I saw that.
All right. Well, we've got 3 non-action items, 3 items on the consent agenda and 3 items on the action portion of the agenda. With respect to the items that are on the consent agenda, is there anyone that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? I want to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as published.
Move approval, Anderson.
Second, Maluchnik.
Second, Malushnik. Movement, Doug Anderson. Approve the consent agenda as shown. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst, with respect to approval of the consent agenda.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Alexander,
Aye.
Alexander and for Foster,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Kotel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Maluchnik,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Metis Castillo,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman. Workman?
Commissioner Workman?
Yes, I'm here. Aye.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
good. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. We have an approved consent agenda. Thank you, everybody. Let's turn now to those action transmittals, 3 of them. The first one is 2022-01. And that is the structure for the executive committee for calendar year 2022. Some of the, as you can see from the action transmittal, some of those positions are appointed by the council. The tab chair position is appointed by the chair of the Met Council. I'm safe for another year, I guess. Anyway, and then the bylaws, you can see, require certain membership. And we've got an embarrassment of riches again. We've got more people applying. It's a great state of Minnesota. Always a volunteer there to help out doing something. We've got more county commissioner applicants than we need 2, and we have 3. And then on the citizen members, we have 2 people that are interested, and we only need 1 person there. And I think both John Ulrich, Commissioner John Ulrich, and Peter Dugan have had conversations with the other folks in their respective categories. And I think we're going to turn first to Commissioner Ulrich, who I think is going to withdraw his name, but I don't want to speak for him. Commissioner Ulrich?
Yeah, that's correct. Stan's going to continue.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner. And then Member Dugan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm withdrawing and in favor of Chris. Chris does, in my opinion, does a great job. Good voice, very smart. And thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Member Dugan. So with those withdrawals of names, we've got the slate that we need, as you can see. So if I think at this point in time, unless anybody has any questions, we can entertain a motion to adopt action.
Windshuttle moves.
right.
Hotel seconds.
All right, Mayor Winchell moves adoption of action transmittal 2022-01. Commissioner Gattel seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes, Mike,
Aye.
thanks. Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Alexander,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Gattel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Maluchnik,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Metis Castillo,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Naryanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. We have an approved action transmittal 2022-01. We have the slate set for the executive committee for this calendar year. Thanks, everybody, again. 2022-02 is the proposed 2022 safety target recommendations. And I'm going to turn to TAC Chair Schulberg, and he's going to introduce Heidi Schulberg to make this presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So this first item before you today, 2022-02, is really the consideration or tab recommendation that the Met Council adopt the 2022 safety performance targets in Table 1. The TAC did hear this at our last month and had a unanimous recommendation to recommend this move forward to TAB and to the Council. A couple of things about it is, again, these safety performance targets have to be adopted no later than February 27th of this year. The safety targets that are here that are required both of DOTs and MPOs. In this case, the MPO, Met Council, is selecting their performance targets. That's what you will be discussing. And then additional, and Heidi will talk more about that, is there were 3 additional recommendations that came from the group that reviewed these safety targets. And with that, I'll turn over a presentation to Heidi.
Good. Thank you, Chair Schulberg. Heidi Schulberg, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Solberg and members. I'd also like to introduce our planner, Jed Hanson, who will actually be co-presenting with me today, and he will kick us off.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Hanson, for joining us.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, my name is Jed Hanson, and some of the TAB members here may remember me from this item from last year when I was an intern, and I'm continuing to help with this work as one of the newer planners in MTS. I'll be starting off today by covering our federal requirements for target setting and briefly cover our methodology, and then Heidi will return and discuss our actual safety performance and some of our related planning work. Next slide, please. So the Metropolitan Council is required to set safety targets by the Federal Highways Safety Performance Final Rule. The targets have a handful of purposes, most importantly to inform ways that we can reduce fatal and serious injuries through our planning and programming processes. Specifically, Federal Highway uses these targets to track the performance of their Highway Safety Improvement Program. Both state DOTs and MPOs must establish targets for 5 measures: fatal injuries and their rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, serious injuries in their rate, and non-motorized and fatal and serious injuries. So that's pedestrians, bicycles. Next slide, please. MPOs are required to set a target for each of these measures, and they may do it by either establishing targets through a quantifiable method that is specific to their planning area, or by agreeing to support State Department of Transportation targets. State DOT targets are assessed annually for making significant progress by federal highway, and they may adjust their HSIP allocation based on that progress. Metropolitan planning organizations are not, however, assessed by FHWA, and there is no penalty for failing to meet targets. Next slide, please. In 2021, the Council adopted targets that decreased steadily from a baseline to 0. Under the adopted method, 2020 targets were held over into 2021 with the understanding that future year targets would reduce on a straight line to reach the region's share of 2025 goals in the Minnesota Strategic Highway Safety Plan. This plan sets its targets to no more than 225 traffic deaths and no more than 980 serious injuries statewide by the year 2025. This method was developed through peer region research and with feedback from an ad hoc safety targets work group. Next slide, please. There was no public comment period in target adoption. The targets get integrated into the Transportation Improvement Program. When the Transportation Improvement Program was out for public comment this fall, we received 9 comments on the 2021 targets, requesting lower targets or adoption of a Vision Zero approach to safety planning. Some of the notable comments called the targets appalling, abhorrent, disappointing, or mortifying. And there was also a social media thread that regarded the targets that gained quite a bit of engagement. Next slide, please. So how does this methodology work over time? Continuing the method adopted in 2021 is aggressive compared to peer MPOs. Under the present method, and assuming that the Strategic Highway Safety Plan targets continue to similarly decline, this method would set all targets to 0 by or before 2035. There are very few MPOs with target setting methods that equate to a Vision Zero scenario before 2040. However, these targets are for measuring our performance. Ultimately, our ability to achieve these targets is determined by our funding and programming processes to reach these outcomes. Next slide, please. This slide shows our proposed targets under this methodology. The first row shows the adopted targets from 2021, which we will revisit shortly when Heidi covers the preliminary 2021 performance. The second row, highlighted in gray, indicates the targets recommended by the TAC as outlined in the action item for discussion today. The recommended targets for 2022 are 98 fatalities, which is about a third fatality per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, 669 serious injuries, which is about 2.25 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and 164 pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries. The following rows in the table illustrate how this target setting methodology reduces the targets over time. These are just provided for information. The council and its committees will be asked to consider these targets annually, so there will be yearly room for adjustment. The 2025 row also represents the region's share of the state's 2025 goal outlined in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And Chair, I will pass it to Heidi, who will cover the performance and the related planning work.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Next slide, please, Greg. So setting our targets on an annual basis provides us with time to review how we're actually doing in relation to working toward achieving our goals. And so the next 3 slides are showing you the actual numbers for what's happened on the ground in our region compared to what we've set for targets. So the top line in this case for all fatalities, so this does include all modes, is the top blue line. And then the green line on the bottom shows the targets that we've set since this process began, was setting them for 2018. And then as Jed mentioned, the last 3 years would be as if we continue this methodology, what that would look like. So as Member Barnes highlighted earlier in his agency report from MnDOT, our direction this year is concerning upward trend. These numbers still are preliminary for 2021, but the upward trend is not going to change at this point. I just thank MnDOT Office of Traffic Engineering for providing this data for us, including the preliminary information. So when these data were pulled about January 5th, we had 184 people who died on roadways in our region, compared to our target that we set last year, which was 106. That had actually, as you can see, remained relatively level from the previous 3 years. We'd held over the previous year's target. This also just kind of shows you the year-by-year direction. It's not, fortunately, just kind of a straight linear relationship with declines in this. There can be some variation year to year. So we did just want to show what the actual numbers have been each year in relation to the targets that we've set. Next slide, please. This one shows the serious injuries with our targets. We will also be missing this target for this year based on the preliminary data, which put us about 826 compared to our target of 738. You can see in contrast to the previous 2 years, we were slightly under our targets for serious injuries for those years after a declining trend from previous years. Next slide. This one is for the measure that combines bicycle and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. Again, these numbers are included in the previous 2 slides, but the measure calls these out specifically. And we'll also be missing this target this year with an estimate of preliminary numbers of 210 people who have died or been seriously injured biking or walking in our region, and our target was 181. Again, these are for just the 7-county metro for 2021. The previous numbers were for the full MPO region, which includes the urbanized portions of Wright and Sherburne counties. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides are just more of a visual representation of our preliminary numbers for 2021 compared to the previous year in 2020. And it's also useful when you're looking at crash data because of that variation that you saw in those charts where there's some fluctuation from year to year, to use kind of an average of previous years of data to kind of use as a benchmark when you're comparing results. So we also have a 3-year average from 2017 to 2019 for comparison to see how that's changed. And as alluded to again earlier, looking at pedestrian fatalities as of the preliminary numbers that were pulled increased in our region for about 80% since last year, and are still significantly higher, 37% over the 3-year average. And then all fatalities increasing almost 60% from last year, and then 47% from the 3-year average. So it's a disturbing trend in the wrong direction. Next slide, please. This is a little bit less variation overall with the serious injuries, as you saw on that chart overall, but the blue ones are representing everyone killed in other modes of driving, passengers, motorcyclists. The green are pedestrians, and then the gray one are bicyclists. Next slide, please. The performance comparison chart on this one just kind of shows the same information broken out. I think one thing we wanted to take away from some of the public comments we got was to try to make it a little bit clearer that bicycle and pedestrian numbers are included in the total numbers. We were kind of inferring from some of the public comments that we got that may not have been entirely clear to members of the public who were maybe adding those to the total numbers. So we did just kind of want to make that clearer as much as we can, that they are included in the total numbers. And then just, again, wanted to show the differences in those between modes and all fatalities, both between the previous year and then the 3-year average. Next slide, please. So again, the recommendation before you today is support from the work group and the technical committees, passing this along to TAB. For continuing the target setting method that we adopted for 2021, which reduces our targets annually to match our regional share of the goals in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan for the state of Minnesota. Next slide. So this is not included in your motion specifically. These recommendations, we're taking these more as staff to look at how to incorporate these into our regular work plan. But our safety work group did have 3 additional recommendations that they felt were important to also convey about work that's needed to support us working towards meeting these targets. The first one was, as you had mentioned, the USDOT does not penalize with financial repercussions MPOs for not meeting their targets, but the group discussed there's nothing stopping the region from holding ourselves accountable for creating a framework for some type of accountability policy for actions we might need to take when we're not meeting these targets. So there's more discussion that we'll need to figure out the best venue to have for this. It could potentially call for increased funding from the regional solicitation to focus on safety. One comment that we heard at the TAC meeting was also, that's a little bit longer term time frame when those projects actually get on the ground as well. So we'll also need to discuss what kind of more shorter term things might be options for the region to take. The second recommendation was really highlighting that the region needs to have a conversation about our different policy goals, investments, and the trade-offs that happen between those different goals to really better communicate what our priorities are as a region and kind of where safety is within those priorities. We do have a item planned for our work program this year, kind of in preparation for our next transportation policy plan update to review and do some engagement around those goals. So we do see this recommendation kind of fitting into that work. And then the third one was a recommendation that a work group should review the solicitation criteria and the weightings to make recommendations for how we might be able to emphasize safety improvements that will specifically address these safety targets that focus on fatal and serious injuries. So again, we always review the solicitation after every process, or this could also potentially be work included in one of our next projects, which next slide I'll cover briefly. So just to highlight on two things that we have in progress as far as work that we're doing at the council to try to support the region, moving toward reducing these numbers and providing a safer system for everyone. Regional Pedestrian Safety Action Plan work will be continuing to wrap that up in the first part of this year. It was a little bit of a pause last year. We worked on doing some refinement of some systemic data analysis that has been done as part of that project. We do have a recommended measure in the new regional solicitation that's come out of that work. We'll be doing additional work on identifying some high-level information about countermeasures and other programmatic recommendations to wrap that work up in the first part of this year. And we're also talking about scoping out our next project, which would be a regional safety plan that would look at all their crashes. So the first one that we've done is focused on pedestrian crashes with vehicles and drivers. The second one would focus on all the other modes for crashes as well. So we would anticipate that that will kick off in the second part of this year. Next slide. We would be happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, the motion we have before you today from the TAC would be to support recommending to the council that we adopt these targets for 2022.
All right, thank you, Ms. Schallberg. So the recommended motion is embodied in 2022-02, and I think that's at the TAC or the TAB recommend that the Metropolitan Council adopt the 2022 safety performance targets set forth in Table 1, which is shown in the body of your action transmittal. Other questions? Commissioner Look.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm supportive of the new targets. Certainly, it's something we should be working towards. But I think the primary question I'm left with is, what is causing this upward trend? And I've been on TAB now for, I don't know, 10 years, 9 years. And I've seen kind of a diversion of dollars from roads and bridges for other purposes, but I've also seen a significant investment in bike and ped. And yet we continue to see increased issues with bike and ped, and we continue to see increased fatalities on our roadway systems. And if no one else, I've been a huge advocate of trying to make investments in our roads and bridges from the standpoint that when you have roads that are built to, say, 1950 standards, and you have significant more traffic on there than ever before they were designed for, all of a sudden you do start to have more accidents, more fatalities, and problems associated with that. So I see kind of this congestion element, that we're experiencing a fair amount in the metro area as leading to kind of driver aggression. So whether you're aggressive in cars to other cars, or whether you're aggressive towards bicyclists or pedestrians, or whatever the case is, I think that aggression is contributing to a lot of this. And I would say that the state the safety dollars that we're currently applying to it are not addressing the issues enough, and we need to be more focused on how we can invest in those roadway systems that are truly problematic, kind of putting public safety as a top priority, as paramount in our investment of the $200 million TAB dollars every single year.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, we got a few other hands up. I see Member Ulrich raising his hand, but Member Geisler, then Member Narayana, and then Member Dugan, then Commissioner Ulrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Geisler?
The question I had is, as far as in the action transmittal, there's the recommended additional actions that'll be covered in the work plan. I just wanted to understand our relationship in approving this action transmittal. Are we also approving that gets baked into the work plan? Is that going to happen anyways? Just a little bit of clarity around what we're approving and what the goals are for those additional actions.
My understanding from the motion itself was that we would just be recommending the council adopt the 2022 safety performance targets embodied in that particular table 1. As to, you raise a good question though, that as to the working group, that was a question I had back in my mind, was what Heidi suggested, this formation of a working group on safety to try to develop methods for creating safer conditions, whether it's for vehicles or non-motorized movements. But Heidi, would you like give us a clarification on what you want for a motion?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So to clarify, the motion today is focused on adopting the 2022 targets, specifically as far as forwarding those to the council. The 3 additional work group recommendations we're taking as direction to staff to incorporate those into the work program. So those are not included specifically in the motion. Those types of activities are not as typically included in motions to TAB and council, but we are, as I kind of outlined on that slide, looking for ways to incorporate those into our work program, and we'll be carrying those forward.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Schulberg. And Member Geisler, did that prompt any follow-on?
No, I just wanted to clarify that, this is essentially informational items or action items that staff was taking on their behalf. And I just wanted to clarify that that wasn't with the additional actions being tied to the action item. I wanted to make it clear what we were doing today.
Thank you, Member Geisler. And Ms. Schulberg, could you provide any insight into this working group that you discussed in your presentation, the formation of a working group that would work on safety-related matters, how that would be composed, who would be doing it, what the timing would be?
Sure. So, as we had outlined, we did have kind of an ad hoc group that was pulled more primarily from technical committee members to help us with the targets over the past 2 years. So that's had a really specific focused purpose. The recommendations from the work group, some were for the regional solicitation. So we may have a group that focuses specifically on that. But really, as we're starting to do more broad safety planning work, that is something that we'll be discussing, whether there is a need for an ongoing safety technical work group. And so I would say that we haven't really had conversations yet at this point as far as what a composition of that group might look like, and we would be welcome to input on that. That's really kind of more in the early stages, but it's something that if we see the need at the regional level to help us have that guide the work that we're doing, we would look at forming that.
Okay, thank you. TAB members, keep that in the back of your mind. I think the region would be well served if we had some TAB members on that working group. Really well served. And if you're interested in serving, just let Heidi know. I see Mr. Martinson with his hand up. So just maybe put it in the chat if you're interested in serving on a working group. And then I'm going to go to Member Narayana and then Member Dugan and then Commissioner Ulrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Heidi and Jed, for this comprehensive presentation. I just had a couple of comments. One is, yes, we've seen an increase in the trend of the number of fatalities and severe injuries, but also just want to recognize that at baseline, we are doing really poorly, both as a region, as a state, and as a country in terms of how many people get killed or severely injured on our roads year after year. close to 40,000 people in the United States are killed. And that should just not be acceptable to any one of us. I can guarantee that anybody in this room knows someone who's been hurt or killed in a car crash or severely injured. And again, that's something we just continue to accept as a society, and I don't think that we should. And I also think we should be really making decisions based off of facts. I'm a transportation engineer, and we should be making decisions based on the facts and on logic, and not based on conjecture. So saying things like aggression is leading to more traffic crashes, traffic fatalities is just not true. What we saw was a significant reduction in congestion in the last couple of years because of COVID, and we saw severe injuries and fatalities go significantly up. And that is, the direct, result of how we design our roads, where we prioritize, getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible, as fast as possible, over the lives of people who are using the streets. And so instead of, I think we should be putting more money into bike bed safety projects, putting more money into transit projects. All of those modes we've seen, when we invest in them, we see safety improve for everybody around us. And then finally, I just want to say, what can we do to really make sure we connect these safety issues to the projects that we are funding within the TAB? Safety should be the #1 priority, not anything else. In a few minutes, we're going to hear another report on the highway mobility analysis that asks us to invest billions of dollars in new highway funding. And that seems to me like it's in direct contradiction to the goals that we would have from a safety perspective. And so I think we need to have an honest conversation about what all of this means. With that, I'm ending my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Member Narayanan. And then I'm going to go to Member Dugan, and then Commissioner Ulrich, and then Member Martinson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two clarifications. Heidi or Jed, on slide 11, if you can go to slide 11, I just have a question about the all fatalities increased 59%. Yeah, is that meaning just at that section of the graph or the bar, or was that for the entire bar?
That's for the entire bar.
Entire bar. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought so, but I just want to be clear. And the comment that I have, if the target is 0 deaths by 2035, and we're forecasting what, 118 in 2025, I think it is. I don't remember exactly. What would be the difference or strategy that would drive it down that fast, that much? I'm not saying it's not a good goal, but it just seems would be pretty dramatic. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that observation, Member Dugan. I think that would be something we'd certainly want to posit or make a query of the work group about. And then Commissioner Ulrich, and then Member Martinson.
Well, I'm at this point probably stating the obvious is we basically heard a lot of what's happening, but very little why, and little understanding on that of why the deaths are up, both in this presentation here and then what Mike Barnes had presented. And we really need to have presentations at the TAB on to understand the why. Why are the fatalities? I mean, so I don't know how we're going to get that work done and get that, but we certainly do need the information.
It sounded like there were subgroups working on that. Ms. Schulberg, is that true that there are subgroups? Or I guess Member Barnes mentioned it too.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members. So we'll just emphasize too, the data are not final yet for 2021. So there is actually a 30-day time window for reporting fatalities. So perhaps a crash that may have happened at the end of December, if somebody dies within 30 days of there, it would still be counted in those numbers. So these are definitely not final, but definitely know that MnDOT staff and DPS staff regularly do work to try to identify patterns and what's going on, and we can coordinate with them as far as seeing if they might be able to come back once the data are a little bit more finalized to share what they've been able to glean from those.
All right, thanks for that. Any follow-on, Member Dugan?
No, thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'll let you take your hand down. And then I'm going to go to Member Martinson, and then I think it's Commissioner Karwoski, and then back to Commissioner Look.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Schellberg, and thank you, Mr. Hanson, for this report to us. I appreciate it. I want to point out that there was a unanimity in the public comments that were received about this, all basically saying these are not even nearly aggressive enough targets, and I think that's important to pay attention to. I also want to express strong support for the staff recommendations about this working group, and I do hope that this is something that the TAB will come back to, because the lack of teeth, the lack of the enforcement of these targets by the DOT, it stands in direct contrast to the fact that they definitely sanction organizations in areas that aren't meeting their air quality standards. So that lack of enforcement from the Fed suggests, in fact, very important that we do, in fact, implement our own kinds of accountabilities here. And so I would be curious to know, are there specific actions that we currently have attached to trying to meet those targets? And if we do, can you just sort of point to what some of those are? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to Ms. Schellberg in a moment for that question, for an answer to that question, I should say. Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree. We have to reduce injuries and fatalities. I like Commissioner Ulrich point on, I don't see much why. To follow up on that, what I think would be very helpful if we could get information on the locations. I've got a feeling that they're probably concentrated in strategic areas where the fatalities and injuries are happening. So it'd be nice to see a map in the region for that. And then it also would be nice to see the situation of the road. You know, was it on a ramp? What was the pavement? Some of that analysis of road condition and weather condition. That's all in a police report, but that kind of data I think would be really helpful in solving our street strategy. I think Commissioner Luck pointed out in this when you solicit for a road, as we expand roads, we can, factor that learning in. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Luck, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I appreciate everyone's concerns on this and points of view. I guess for me, primarily, I need to know why in the last 10 years, what we've been doing, the investments we've been making have not been working. That's the information I need to receive, because we've been investing serious money to the tune of $2 billion in what we believe are solutions to our challenges. And we see nothing but numbers going up. So we have to then deduce the fact that maybe what we're doing isn't the right direction, perhaps, I would think. Or you could possibly deduce the fact that there's been a misappropriation of resources in some capacity. We need to try and establish that. And I agree with Member Narayanan. Safety should be our top priority, and it should be based on what the top usage is. What is the primary amount of people using, and what is the most incidents occurring and in terms of safety issues. And those should be where our investments are made. And to the point of higher fatalities during COVID, yes, we're very aware of that statistic. And it was primarily due to the fact that there were very few people on the road and people were driving like idiots. Okay, so speed probably has a function to do with that. And the simple fact that people were behaving poorly has a larger issue to do with that. But we have to look at where is our greatest return on investment, not in terms of policy, like we hope people will adopt this, or we hope people will start using that mode as opposed to this mode. We need to find out what mode they're currently using and try to eliminate the factors that are contributing to the dangers in that mode. I think that's our best investment in resources. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'm going to go now to Member Crimmins and then Member Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are along the lines of everyone else's, but I'd be interested in a breakdown when these serious accidents, are they all individual vehicles or there's public transportation involved? How many of the accidents involve public transportation? And I'd like to know how many accidents happened on express lanes and SOV lanes compared to the regular highway. Just to, again, to echo what's going on. We need to find out better what's happening and where, so maybe we can address it in a more detail. So I'm just asking for a little more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is really good discussions and having the interest in kind of the why side. First, I want to clarify, Mr. Chair, when I was talking about groups, I was talking about the statewide TZD committees and work that's going on across. They get, multi-agency, different disciplines put together. And so as a follow-up to Commissioner Look's comment about the investments, I mean, that's one of the items where, we know there's only so many things from an engineering and investing in areas. And then there is the other functions that are in there too of the different E's of TZD. And as I had mentioned earlier too, I know with the speed side, people have, started to question, where is some of the enforcement? And I think we know that there's a lot of different issues that are going on around, either how much or whatever with that. I just use that as an example because there isn't any one of the items that are silver bullets, but we just know that things have changed and there's a lot of different people that are trying to look at either some of the causes and or some of the things. How do you turn the curve on something that definitely did change? And so there are some folks that can, the data that's being asked. I know there's spreadsheets that'll show some of the information. People will definitely be able to, our traffic, whether it's MnDOT or even work with DPS, they can put some of the data in different ways to start showing that. But in the end, as we go along, it's not just investment in the infrastructure. It's going to be overall. It's from it is policies to, again, from its enforcement to education to the just a lot more than just the engineering and the structure, though that still continues to be, we got infrastructure that continues to need to be changed, whether in narrowing areas that need to be to be able to have people cross, whatever the different solutions. There's a lot of different things going on, but I do think having some more the professionals that work in this come in and be able to show and answer questions, I think would be great.
I think it's a very good point. I think you've got a clear sense that there's 34 people on this call who care about the number of people getting killed in our metropolitan region every year in traffic accidents of one type or another, and we want to do something about it. So adding to the complexity of the work we already do is figuring out how to keep people safer, which I think as several people have pointed out, including Commissioner Look, that's at the core of everything we do, including Member Narayanan. So, so for the purposes of the work we need to get done, and in order to comply with the federal requirements, we're being asked to pass Action Transmittal 2022-02, where the technical group has looked at these recommendations, created that table 1. So I'm wondering if someone cares to move Action 2022-02.
I'll move it, Mr. Chair. Go tell.
Commissioner Gazelle moves
it.
passage.
Second at Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. We got a
Mr. Chair,
motion second, and now we got discussion, further discussion. Yes,
this is Matt Hollinshead.
Member Hollinshead.
I just like to say that if you're on a bus or a train or a light rail train, you're on a big vehicle and you're much less likely to be injured because you're not out on the road with other motor vehicles. And so I think there's an aspect of safety here that correlates with getting more people to ride transit. And I would like to see some data on that, if any exists anywhere. So if our wonderful staff can see if there's any such data, I would dearly like to do that.
Well, Elaine is going to gather some data. If you noticed in the chat, as a follow-on to what Member Barnes was talking about, and then Member Narayanan just put the specific percentage in the chat. Member Holland said that you were wondering about 2% of all fatalities are in public transportation.
Yeah,
probably
I think
from
that's useful, but also in those cities where more people ride public transportation, is there any relationship of that with the fatalities that are experienced by drivers and pedestrians and cyclists? That's what I wonder.
That's a good question too. Yeah, maybe we can look globally at that. But what I get a clear sense of here is that depending on how that work group is composed, and I could see it having a pretty broad composition, there's going to be TAB members that are going to want to represent our organization as part of that working group to see if we can figure out some ways to enhance safety for everybody that's using our roadway system. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments during the discussion phase? All right, we've got a motion and a second on 2022-02. No further discussion. Roll call, please. Ms. Ernst?
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Alexander,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Gotel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Keeley, Keeley,
Aye. Sorry, couldn't get the button quick enough.
you're fine. Lewis,
Aye.
Zanicki,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Malichnik,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Action Transmittal 2022-03 is approved. Or 02 is approved, excuse me. We'll move on now to 03, and I'm going to turn back to Chair Solberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So action transmittal item 2203 before you is a scope change to Vernon Avenue Bridge replacement. And that's short order. They had received $7 million in the bridge category in 2018 in regional solicitation funds. And at that time, the scope was very narrow. It was essentially replacing the bridge and some additional turn lane configuration in that location. Through project development, the county has realized that in order to, in a couple parts related to our last discussion, to facilitate a little bit slower movements through the area that didn't need to happen, to increase bicycle pedestrian accommodations in the area, that they needed to do some additional work beyond just that project. It also, as part of it, really took out the turn lane that was originally part of the project. So what you have now is what turns out to be a more expensive project, but they're still accomplishing all the intention of the original project that was approved by TAB, and the reduction in the turn lane that was there is a difference of about $10,000 in the total project cost. So as a scope change, TAC recommended approval of the project because it is replacing the bridge along with additional work, except for the turn lane. And at $10,000, because the project is giving better benefits to the area, and because it's such a small amount, $10,000 wouldn't pay for any additional projects. that TAC recommended that the county continue with those dollars, didn't have to turn them back, and that the scope change would be approved. And you can see the difference in the two projects in your staff report. Otherwise, any questions? I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Chair Solberg on this matter? Remember, Dugan, you still have your hand up there, I think. Thank you. Commissioner Guttel, any comment?
No, one of the things that staff had talked to me about was the fact that they needed to do more, and this is making better. And when we talk about doing more, we talked about just recently the pedestrians and turn lanes and safety issues. And so I think we're taking this very seriously. So I'm hopeful that this adds a lot of safety factors as well. That's what the hope is.
I know that being involved in this project, because it's in Edina, there's been a group of citizens involved, and nearby residents, business people, county technical people, city technical people, and I think that it's a lot better project now that it is coming back for some slight modification, and it needs to be done. I think it's one of the more deficient bridges in Hennepin County, so I know
Sure
that.
is. I've traveled it many times.
So anyway, and it adds a nice pedestrian element to it too, elevated,
Exactly.
a little bit more protection. So
Exactly.
anyway, anybody have any questions for staff, for Chair Solberg or Commissioner Guttel? Otherwise, we could entertain a motion to approve it.
I'll move it. I'll second that.
Okay, let's go through that again. Who's moving it? Member Lewis?
Wind shuttle moves.
Wind shuttle moves. Commissioner Guttel seconds. All right. And any further discussion? Roll call, please, with respect to potential approval of 2022-03.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Alexander,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Juliana Stevens,
Aye.
Guttel,
Aye.
Hanson, Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali. Jalali,
Member Jalali?
I said aye, sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Jepson, Jepson, Julie.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you not hear me?
No.
No, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Yes, I said aye.
Okay, thanks. Karwoski,
Aye.
Healy,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Lindicky,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Luchnik,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle, Windshuttle,
Mayor,
Mark, you there?
he's there. I can see him.
Are you asking me? I don't know, something went on. I lost everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and Workman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good. We have passage of 2022-03. Thanks, everybody. And now on to, I misspoke earlier. We had 5 items to deal with in the non-consent category. And 2022-04 is the next one. And turn it back to Chair Solberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So item 2204 is a program year extension by the city of Blaine for the 99th Avenue Baltimore Street roundabout that is programmed in fiscal year 22 to move into 20. Background on this, the project was selected in the 2020 HSIP category for improvements to that intersection and moved forward to program year 2022. So they, with the thought that they would be able to deliver that project in time. That project is coordinated with a Highway 65 project. And so that has been under a planning and environmental linkages study with MnDOT. The process took a little longer than was expected. So the city is a little bit behind in the development overall and would like to have additional time to move this project back to 23 so that it can have better coordination with that Highway 65 improvements. Little piece of note that you saw in your staff analysis is that under the program year assessment, they need a minimum score and a minimum score of 7 to be eligible for that extension. And this project did receive a 6. However, part of that is state aid is recognizing that that number in part was given because they were moving forward to 22. So in that case, MnDOT's state aid is not or is supportive of this project moving back to 23. That said, the TAC did review this item and recognizing that it would result in a better project, better coordination with Trunk Highway 65, did support the request and recommends approval of moving the program year to 2023.
Thanks for that good explanation, Chair Solberg. Questions for Chair Solberg on this matter? Or comments from anybody? All right. Is there a motion to approve 2022-04?
So moved,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Who was the mover? Commissioner Look? Who was it?
This is Julie Jepson. I'd like to make the motion or second.
Yeah, all right. Member
second.
Jepson, we'll let you make the motion. Member Malushnik seconds. Was that it?
I think somebody else wanted to be a
got
second, Mr.
Look.
Chair.
Yeah, I got Jepson as the motion and then Look as the second. Is that correct?
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. We got a motion and a second on 2022-04. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Alexander,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Patel,
Yes, aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali, Midra.
She had to leave for another meeting.
Oh, okay. Jepson,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Maluchnik,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Metis Castillo,
Aye.
Bwin,
Aye.
Naryanan,
Aye.
Pedrick,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Very good. We have passage of 2022-04. Nice project up in the Blaine area. On to 2022-05, which is a combined scope change and tip amendment request for Hennepin County. And go ahead, Chair Solberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, this project is a scope change and then the tip change to go with it, but essentially goes to a project that was initiated by Hennepin County that had 5 intersections that they were going to be making ADA, pavement marking signage, pedestrian crossings, those sorts of improvements at intersections. During the development of their project, they realized that one of those intersections is also on the B line arterial bus rapid transit. And during that coordination, what they realized is their projects weren't lining up in the same time frame. So Hennepin County, instead of building something that the B line would have to reconstruct or add to and change what was just built, Hennepin County is requesting that be taken out of their project and then be constructed with the arterial BRT. That being said, there would be a project savings of approximately $170,000 in federal funds. However, TAC did look at the and realizing that there has been a precedent of projects where elements have been pulled out and then constructed as part of another project. TAC recommended that money be maintained in Hennepin County, as they will, number one, be paying local funds for those B-line improvements on their side. And in addition, the project is being completed, although in two different projects. The intersection is being completed, improvements are being realized. And so short order, TAC did recommend approval of the changes and that the county retain those funds. And again, for the purpose that the entire project that was originally submitted is being accomplished, be it through two different projects.
Question for Chair Solberg. Another succinct and thorough explanation, I think. Is there a motion on 2022-05?
I'll move it. Gotell.
Commissioner, thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Maluchnik.
Second by Member Malushnik. All right, any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst, with respect to action transmittal 2022-05.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Alexander,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Juliana Stevens,
Aye.
Gotell,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Lindicki,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Maluchnik,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
Buin,
Aye.
Naryanin,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
All right, very good. We have passage on 2022-05, and that completes the work of the tab with respect to the action items on the agenda this month. We've got two informational items we're going to go through. The first one is the electric vehicle planning study result, and we got Tony Fisher with us from MTS, and he's going to introduce our speaker, Brendan Jordan from the Great Plains Institute. So I'll take it away. Take it away, Tony.
Thank you, Chair and board members. It's nice to be with you today. We do have Brendan Jordan, Vice President of Transportation and Fuels, with us today. He's really the expert on electrification. Again, my name is Tony Fisher. I'm a highway planner in MTS, and I'm the project manager on the council side. Great Plains Institute is a nonprofit agency that does their own work in the space of cleaning up the fuel systems we use every day. And they also do work for others where it aligns with their mission. So we have quite a bit of detail in this presentation. I just want to extend an invitation to reach out to me afterwards if you have any further questions beyond today. There's a lot of details here. And in fact, there's some pretty small type that we're probably not going to get into today. But with that, I'm happy to introduce Brendan.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
All right, can you hear me?
We can.
Fantastic. Well, I've been told to try to keep this to 10 minutes, so I'll try and rush through this and allow some room for questions if there are any. As Tony said, I'm Brendan Jordan with the Great Plains Institute, and we're pleased to have been able to play a role in this study. Next slide, please. So just to offer a relatively quick overview, I'll give some highlights from the study itself, but then plan to focus in on the recommended strategies and the key takeaways. Ultimately, the goal here is, as transportation electrification continues to move forward, what's the role of the council? How does this impact the council and the TAB? So next slide, please. So study goals were to identify strategies to accelerate EV adoption in the Twin Cities as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve public health. You do see it is very clear that policies make a difference. You see a lot of divergence in the speed of adoption in different states and different regions due to different policy frameworks. The study seeks to guide future investments, policies, and other work to accelerate EV adoption for the Met Council and partner agencies, inform the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan, and other investments and policy proposals. And we'll have final products by May, so that a lot of the work is complete and still some additional work going forward. Next slide, please. The focus is to understand, from an equity point of view, equity was a significant component of this study. We did work with a terrific consultant on this area and did a series of interviews, literature review, and really tried to identify best practices. Really identifying that there are harms from the existing system. Highway pollution impacts the health of those living nearby, and particularly heavily burdened groups, including low income and Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and that those same communities have less resources for responding to climate change. We did, again, engagement was part of this study, but that's not to imply that you wouldn't need additional engagement as you identify strategies and move forward. That should be done in an inclusive way. At the same time, there's opportunities from an equity point of view, opportunities to reduce tailpipe emissions, leading to cleaner air, opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which could also disproportionately impact certain communities, and to reduce fuel and operating costs. And there's also ways to think about equity as you're designing programs and policies. Next slide, please. And I'm gonna try and run through this. I mean, the transportation is the largest emitting sector. Minnesota has statutory greenhouse gas reduction goals that are not being met. And in fact, transportation emissions are on the upswing. Next slide. And electric vehicles operating in Minnesota offer a clear greenhouse gas advantage relative to gasoline and diesel vehicles. It does vary depending on the utility that supplies the electricity. That is the big variable. But in any utility operating in Minnesota, you're going to see a significant greenhouse gas reduction relative to gasoline or relative to diesel. Next slide. So just, again, checking in on the process, we're completing a white paper that will review the landscape, looking at policies in other areas. We're doing data analysis on travel patterns and trying to understand where this can fit in going forward. Also looking at fleets and on trying to identify use cases where EVs really offer a financial advantage, where they really make sense, and where some additional effort could be helpful. So we're doing an EV use case identification and evaluation, charging needs assessment, both for fleets and for the public, and identifying strategies to help the Twin Cities scale EV adoption, including, again, that equity component. Next slide, please. So we'll get into the meat of it now. What are the draft strategies? So next slide. So, there's been an ongoing process. The things that still have, that are still in the works are, presenting the use case analyses and the metro charging corridor assessment. But we do have draft strategies, and a lot of the work has already taken place. Next slide. I am trying to, not spend too much time on the process and try to get into the actual strategies themselves, which is there. That's where we are now. So really thinking about kind of 3 roles for the council. There's some areas where the council will be the lead entity. There's some areas where they will partner with others. And there's some areas where funding activities is the action item. So starting with strategies to support additional charging infrastructure, potential areas for the council to lead are, number 1, identifying how the regional solicitation can further support EV readiness projects, increasing the visibility of Livable Communities Act grants to fund EV charging installations, providing analysis, best practices, and data, and identifying opportunities to support charging infrastructure in affordable housing communities. Those are opportunities to lead. Opportunities to partner includes connecting cities and counties to available state, federal, and utility funding, and working with a third-party convener to develop a model ordinance for EV-ready parking standards. Really leveraging all the local government relationships. And funding opportunities might be providing grants to install fast chargers in strategic areas and helping cities develop programs and incentives that promote charging in multi-unit dwellings. You'll see that focus on multi-unit dwellings a lot. It's easier to handle charging in homes with attached garages. Takes a little more work to make sure that we're providing charging in multi-unit dwellings. And it's also a lot cheaper to handle that up front when you're constructing the building, even if that's just putting in conduit, rather than trying to add it later in many cases. Next slide, please. This is, again, with the same lead support partner approach, strategies to increase EV availability. So opportunities for leadership are identifying how to further provide financial support for EV car sharing programs, assessing internal fleet at the council for electrification opportunities, conducting comprehensive fleet and infrastructure electrification study for contracted services, and collecting and sharing data on EV access by demographic categories. Support. This is aligning the Met Council electric bus routes with the zero emission bus transition plan and investing in projects identified in the Metro Transit zero emission bus transition plan. So, Metro Transit, with direction from the legislature, is developing an overall zero emission bus transition plan, just so for the awareness of that group, if you all were not aware. Partnership opportunities, again, connecting cities and counties to available state, federal, and utility funding, really serving as a resource to all of those local government entities. Next slide, please. Strategies on marketing, education, and outreach, opportunities for leadership, development and dissemination of marketing materials for targeted communities, providing a website on the Met Council's website, a web page on the Council's website with basic EV education information and links to resources, just serving as an informational role. Partnership, participating in and promoting the Minnesota Department of Transportation's EV Ready certification program for local governments, and expanding that program, working with affordable housing providers and other organizations to educate residents, continuing to coordinate with other partners like state agencies, nonprofits, and local agencies, and convening local government partners on EV and equity opportunities. Funding, there may be opportunities from an education point of view to support local government efforts to do educational events such as ride and drives, which ends up being one popular way of connecting with citizens on this topic. Next slide, please. The study identified some areas where some additional work is needed on the subject of e-bikes, electric pedal assist bicycles, and electric scooters. present an opportunity to reduce vehicle miles driven. There's also, I think, a lot of potential. We're seeing a lot of movement in other jurisdictions around electric cargo and electric freight bikes to reduce delivery vehicle trips. You're seeing, for example, a significant pilot project in New York by Amazon to kind of handle that last mile freight need and take some vans off the road. Equity, impacts and opportunities of EVs now in the future. Really, equity was a big focus of this study, but I think continuing to focus in that area, really understand the opportunities is going to continue to be important. EV implementation, developing metrics for EV implementation and greenhouse gas reduction in the regional solicitation. I think just understanding what you're trying to achieve and how to measure success. EV safety is assessing gaps in the local government response to EV crashes and fires. So for example, working with first responders and just understanding what the needs are, so that we're ready when things do happen. EV charging, role for counties in deploying charging infrastructure beyond their facilities is another opportunity where some more study would be helpful. Next slide, please. Just kind of wrapping up some key takeaways. EVs are a significant opportunity for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, consistent with the state goals in the Next Generation Energy Act. Transportation electrification is not the only transportation greenhouse gas reduction strategy. We all know that there are others, and transit and bike and pedestrian, other low carbon fuels. It's one of those strategies operating alongside other strategies, and none of those strategies will succeed on their own, including transportation electrification. Electric vehicles provide ample opportunities to reduce inequities, but vulnerable groups must be part of the decision-making process if you're going to achieve that goal. And greater policy intervention, funding, resource sharing, and education is critically needed. It will not just happen on its own. So an active role is really important, and that's really what we see looking across the country, is the regions and states and local governments that are most proactive have the best results. Next slide. I think that might be it. So defer to the group on how much time you have, but I am more than happy to take time for questions if your agenda allows for it.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Jordan. Member Martinson's got one for you right off the bat, and then Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brendan, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it, and very much supportive of seeing this move towards electric vehicles. I'm also very pleased to see the inclusion and consideration of e-bikes in this, and I think particularly in the core cities, e-cargo bikes are going to be a much more efficient way of getting freight handled in the kind of ways that we're going to need to going forward. And while it's obviously important to be addressing the greenhouse gas emissions that EVs can produce for us, one thing I don't see mentioned is what, if any, impact they have on also reducing the production of black carbon, or PM 2.5, that's associated with single occupancy motor vehicle use. And so I'm wondering, because that's also a target of federal regulations for air quality. So are EVs, a lot better in terms of that? Because the PM 2.5 issue is something, it's an equity issue, because that concentrates on these freeway areas where a lot of populations that are disadvantaged tend to reside. And so they're exposed to that more. So could you speak to that just a little bit further? Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. I mean, the really short answer is yes. So electric vehicles are considered to be zero emission vehicles. That means zero tailpipe emissions. So we understand that you have to take into account upstream emissions mostly from electricity generation. But even taking that into account, you do see full life cycle greenhouse gas reductions. And of course, we know that the electric grid is getting continuously cleaner. So you'd expect to see those emissions. You know, EVs can lead to greater or will lead to greater demand for electricity. And we have looked at that for the whole Midwestern region and found that even taking into account greater electricity demand, because of the trends in the electricity sector, you get overall combined emissions reductions from both transportation and electricity due to greater EV adoption.
Member Martinson, any follow on?
So I guess my question was more about whether, you know, so EVs, in particular car-based EVs, are still producing PM 2.5 through brake wear and tire wear, and that doesn't get reduced unless we reduce VMTs, right? So I wasn't thinking the upstream part. I was actually thinking the local impact from motor vehicles being driven in particularly urban areas.
Thanks, Brian. You know, yeah, I'm tracking you now. That, you know, tires are a sort of a minority contributors to some of the air quality impacts, non-zero impact. I'm not really. I think we'd be doing great to get rid of the combustion-related emissions and the tires. You know, hopefully maybe there's some work going on to find a solution to that. It's a great question.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you. Commissioner Karwoski and then Member Hollinshead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brendan, thanks for the presentation. I'm supportive of electric cars, especially as the consumers get more educated and the consumers are driving the demand. That really appeals to me. I was very intrigued by Ford Motor and their F-150, the most popular truck, converting to electric. That seems like that could be a game changer. I have 3 questions though, and one is I looked up the surcharges on electric vehicle, and for 2022 it was basically a state tax of $3,000. And when I work within other counties and other county commissioners, a lot of the outstate commissioners cringe because they so dependent. We are all dependent on road funding, so they really cringe on that gas tax loss. So one, in this presentation, I don't see I never see a plan for paying for the roads. You know, a transition plan away from gas taxes to electrical vehicle charge. So that's one question. A second question is the federal infrastructure bill. President Biden often mentions the electric charging stations, and I don't see this mentioned in the plan. Maybe those plans are unraveling, but maybe you can touch base on that. Then my third question is, I don't also mention the chargers being put in. I heard that, you know, a home charger can take a half a day to charge a car. And even if you're going across the country, perhaps it will take many minutes. It's not the old go into a gas station and fill up and you're on your way in 5 minutes. So I don't see the strategy and planning for that and how the consumer is going to embrace that. I gave you a lot to answer there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Jordan.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll try to answer those briefly. Your first question was regarding road funding. I think that's a very good and fair question. The reality today is electric vehicles, for one thing, pay a special $75 EV tax, and that's a tax in lieu of the gas tax. Number two, of course, there's 3 main sources of funding for the Highway Trust. It's motor vehicle sales tax, vehicle registration taxes, and motor vehicle fuel tax. And so typically today, because of the battery, the batteries are expensive, even though the cost is coming down. Your typical EV costs more than a comparable vehicle up front. And so EVs, we've done a lot of analysis, you know, on sort of apples to apples comparison. Your typical EV pays more in terms of registration and sales tax. And by our analysis today, that's more than enough to offset any lost gas tax revenue. So in fact, our view today would be they are paying their fair share. Now, it's an issue for the long term. The other question is just why is road funding declining? And that's primarily due to more fuel efficient vehicles. Electric vehicles are actually not a significant contributor to lost highway tax revenue. So that funding is declining, and that needs to be a broader, more comprehensive conversation in my personal view. I will say that was not part of scope of the analysis. So this is Brendan Jordan speaking on this topic. Federal infrastructure, there are big opportunities. There's a lot of funding for EV charging in the infrastructure bill. And I think that's part of why this study is important right now, because there are going to be some opportunities to bring in external funding if we're ready for it. Some of that will be competitive. Some of it is going by formula to the Department of Transportation. So the state will be getting some funding, but there's other competitive pools of funding. I think the timing is really good to have this EV assessment in place so we're ready. The whole charging conversation that's a complex topic. I don't know if I can get into all of that today, but the typical electric vehicle driver will charge at home. That's an opportunity that doesn't exist for somebody driving a gasoline vehicle. And charging in your garage, either with a 110 outlet, which would get you about 50 miles of driving overnight, or with a so-called level 2, which would be a 240 outlet and a charger, could get you, would fully charge almost any type of vehicle overnight. Now, we know that, people are going to drive longer distances some days, and that's why, fast charging is important. Kind of your end game there is a very high powered, 350 kW fast charger that would give you, 300 miles of charge in 10 minutes. So that would be less than the typical dwell time at a gas station. Now, that infrastructure doesn't exist yet, but it will come. I think the other issue is just remembering that not everybody has a garage. So looking at things like EV car sharing, looking at making sure there's charging in multi-unit dwellings, making sure we solve the problem for people who don't have a parking structure at all, looking at curbside. So I think we need to really look, because that's the low-cost opportunity for people. Is making sure they have the slower charging available to them. And of course, we've got, electrification opportunities for, transit and a whole variety of things. So it's not just your single occupancy vehicle. There's a lot of modes that can benefit from this. I don't know if I answered your question, Commissioner, but
Brendan, you did an excellent job at really covering a fair amount of detail in each one of those in a short amount of time. But I do think the 3 points I made need to be further explained and educated to the public and the policymakers to make the transition electrical happen. By ignoring some of these things, it's to get more believers by developing detailed plans on some of the points I made. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Mr. Jordan. I'm going to move on to Member Hollingshead, then Commissioner Matas Castillo, and then Member Geisler can wrap it up. We need a little bit of time for Steve Peterson to do the highway mobility needs analysis. So go ahead, Member Hollingshead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested in the level 2 charging availability, not just in multifamily buildings, but in homes. Related to the fact that the Met Council reviews and approves comprehensive plans for cities, I believe. In new subdivisions with attached garages, they're mostly attached now, I believe. Do contemporary codes at all speak to the issue of pre-engineering level 2 chargers so that you have a 240 conduit into the garage and you don't have to install it after you bought the house, which can be a lot more costly? And then I have another follow-up, but I wonder if you have any thoughts on that, Brendan.
Thank you for that really great question. And the answer is no. So it's not required, and it would be really helpful if it were, because as you point out, it's a lot cheaper to run, even if you don't put in a charger, if you just run the conduit so you can install it later in almost every setting, whether it's a single unit or multi-unit, it's just so much cheaper to do it up front. And so we're going to bear a lot of cost later if we don't take care of it.
Yeah, so I guess I would maybe ask our staff, when we review comprehensive plans, is there an ability to put in a standard for such features like the conduit for 240 level 2 charging in new subdivisions for homes? Or is that beyond the scope of the Metropolitan Council's review of comprehensive plans? I don't know who wants to answer that or who can answer that, but I'm interested.
Member Barber is going to try to answer that, Member Holland said.
I'll try and answer it, and then the staff can correct me if I get anything wrong. That would go down to local officials, just like we don't do zoning. You know, part of what we look at is overall land use, but some of those other decisions like permitting and things like that goes to the local jurisdiction.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could on that a little bit.
Mayor, I'm going to have you hold on here. I've got Commissioner Holberg too is in the queue, and I'm going to have you hold on. Or did it deal with that single issue that we were just talking about?
That's what I was going to talk on, so that's fine.
Okay. Well, if it's an add-on to that, go ahead.
Well, just real quick, that would be a homeowner's individual choice, and they could certainly put that in there. But the way contractors are now, they're not going to put anything in there that is a possibility becomes a code. And like, I think that's what you're trying to do. But then again, you're putting in a lot of unnecessary stuff that if someone doesn't have one. And maybe it is that we look to the future that way, but any homeowner would be able to do that. And another.
We just lost you, Mayor. Well. Oh. Mayor, we can't hear you.
I must have froze.
Yeah, I think, well, it didn't look like you were frozen, but we couldn't hear you.
You hear me now? I'll just end real quick.
Yeah, please.
More and more electric panels are being put in the garage. So adding that 220 for a charging would be relatively easy.
All right, good. We lost you again there. I'm going to go to Commissioner Matas Castillo, and then I think it was Member Geisler, then Commissioner Holberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Brendan, for a really nice presentation. I, of course, am very supportive of electric vehicles and any reduction of greenhouse gases and emissions. I'm wondering if the end of the white paper that you're producing, that there'll be any other recommendations beyond just electric emissions or charging stations, but really about overall policy around reducing emissions, especially because it's still really heavily focused on single occupancy vehicles, which I think that's a culture we need to move away from. It's not idealism, as Commissioner Look likes to call it, but really a pragmatic approach to how we do this. Our environment is changing. There's no denying it. You have to look outside from 30 degrees yesterday to 30 below today to know that we have to take pretty strong action. And so I'm hoping that there'll be some other recommendations too about an overall look. I continue to be frustrated that we haven't had a really holistic approach to, if we're gonna do electric vehicles and maybe charging stations come in whatever order, is how are we also incentivizing pedestrian and bike infrastructure, especially in the urban area and the core where we're concentrated, so that if it's not in the rural area immediately, but we can do it here and kind of do our part in the metro area, as well as how we're including rail and rail infrastructure and passenger rail into that as well. And so if we had a holistic approach to how we're truly reducing overall emissions, I think it would be much easier for folks, especially who insist on that the only way in the rural areas they'll be able to get around, that we can do our part and have a holistic approach and layer this on. So I'm hoping that your white paper might include some other recommendations, maybe not the full scope of your white paper, but areas in which we can continue with that direction to have a holistic approach to truly transportation that will reduce overall emissions in a phased approach. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, could I touch on that?
Yes, Mr. Fisher.
Chair and members, so this scope of this project is really around electrification, but I think you'll see in the work leading up to the next regional development guide and next transportation policy plan, you'll see a more holistic approach to climate change.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher, for that follow on. Then Member Geisler, then Commissioner Holberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep these comments brief. I think one thing that we've been dancing around here as we talk about the shift to EVs, I'm surprised that we have not had hey, here's a example ordinance of how you could propose this for commercial buildings or multifamily buildings that are coming in. Because ultimately we need to get that level of land use and planning down to planning commissions. It's below city councils. Or city councils if they're handling the planning activities. I know my sustainability group that's in my city here has been working on updating solar things, but we're still, we're begging for hey, what are the guidelines we should be asking our commercial developers to be doing while they're developing it, especially if they're coming in and asking for variance or other exceptions within the city or TIF funding or other benefits. What are the levers that cities should be leveraging to support EV infrastructure, especially as we look to increase density? That's the kind of guidance that I think this type of white paper, while it's saying you could do this, well, we need a level of tactics that we can hand off to folks that makes some sense or that they can adapt into their code and ordinance. I think that would be a huge boon for places that are trying to figure out how to do this in their own little area or their county or wherever, especially the multifamily problem is a piece of it. And then I just wanted to briefly touch on, as far as personal energy goes, I've had a solar system on my house for 4 years. If I have a full EV that's driving 15,000 miles, I still generate 3 times more power off my solar panels than what my car would do. So I'm still net using less, producing or taking less energy from the grid, which is another offset that we should be talking about. I mean, we're transportation here, but land use and planning and codes and all of that really ties into this problem because it's an infrastructure question. So it is pretty big. So I appreciate the information here. I think this is great. I especially love seeing, the biggest thing is, well, it still takes carbon to power the cars. Well, yeah, but it takes less. So there's a lot of great information here, and I really appreciate the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Geisler. You and I can have a conversation offline too about some of the things we're doing with respect to give to get. If you want to go PUD or you want a variance or some other variation from what's allowed in the code or the comp plan, then there's a price to pay for that. As a give to get. So anyway, I'm going to go to Commissioner Holberg now, and she was not on my screen. My apologies, Commissioner. Good to have you with us.
That's okay. I'm trying different options. I also put a question in chat a couple presentations ago that wasn't addressed. So anyway, on slide number 9, it says that there's going to be a presentation to TAB in February. Is that correct, or is that a typo? Because I could hold my questions for a month.
Chair and committee members, I think that was a typo. I think TAC is going to see this in February just due to scheduling, but we were able to make it to TAB here today.
Okay. So given that, I'm curious why there's no mention of private sector anywhere in this whole presentation. They're going to really be, in my mind, be the key, and strategies around maybe tax credits for stations at hotels or shopping malls, or places where people are actually going to go and spend some time where they could plug in while they were doing other activities. And so can somebody tell me why they're not involved at all in this strategy and planning?
Commissioner, I think it's a great point, and it's not, and I don't think we elaborated which entities are involved, but clearly the private sector has a huge role to play. You know, everything from who's going to be installing the stations, who's going to be site hosts for stations, you know, the role of developers, so you know, the role of automakers. So clearly, just a huge public sector role, or sorry, private sector role in this. So I think it's a great point. Thank you for raising it, Commissioner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that there's great opportunity for partnerships and involving them on the front end. They might have some really good ideas that would make the dollars go a lot farther. So, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. And then I'm scrolling through the chat and finding your question about road rage shootings included in these numbers of traffic-related deaths. And Elaine, I think you're going to try to pull some information together on that. Maybe you could do that as well when you go to gather that information.
Yeah, but I'm keeping track. I'm copying all the questions that are showing up in the chat, and I will follow up with the appropriate staff to get the answers and then send it out to the tab members.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Commissioner, for that question as well. And then Member Crimmins, and then before, Member Nariana may be gone by now, but he was hoping that we could hold over the Twin Cities Highway Mobility Needs Analysis to our next meeting. I don't know if that works, Steve Peterson or Elaine, to hold that one over, because I think he thought it was an important topic, and we're already a little over the appointed ending time.
That would be fine, yes.
Okay, and then I'm going to go back to Member Crimmins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment I wanted to make about Member Hollingshead's comments about 220, 240 in all new homes. 99% of new homes have air conditioners that run on 220, 240. So you're probably going to have 480 if you think you're going to charge your car while you run your air conditioner. You can't do both on the same 220. So now you're talking about double the electricity. But that's just one comment. The other comment was, what are we talking about the battery waste removal? How are we going to handle the hazardous waste of batteries in the future?
All right, thanks for that question as well. I don't know, Mr. Jordan, or if you've seen any information on that or not. Tony, have you seen anything on battery disposal? What's being planned for that for the future?
There's a lot of innovation occurring around battery disposal and recycling. I think there's a real strong focus by industry. The more that we can recycle batteries as they come out of vehicles, the less you have a need to acquire, new metals and materials to produce them. So, that's probably a longer presentation, but we could get into some of the different new companies that are emerging to, come up with new solutions there. Today it's sort of perspective, right? Because very few batteries have actually worn out. So it's planning for the future when more batteries start coming out of vehicles. I think it is certainly an issue that, counties should be thinking about as they're thinking about their strategy. And I know the private sector's really, focused on that as well.
All right. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this particular topic? People are giving all of these topics some really good consideration, from deaths on our transportation infrastructure system to all this clean energy related matter. It's just tremendous to see the level of interest here. So Steve, you are comfortable holding that matter over? We already had to have a couple of people leave.
Yeah, that'd be fine, yes.
All right, okay. All right, Elaine, anything else for today? Or any other tab members have comments they wish to share on any particular topic? Well, this is the closest we've been to the appointed time for adjournment in a couple of months. So at 2:36, I'm going to say we'll stand adjourned. Everybody,
Okay, thank you.
And I'll go back to the meetings. All right, see you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bye-bye.